You watch my docuseries, god damn it, or you're fired. What's up, y'all? It's your boy Seth Grimes, and we are hot off the heels of the Vince McMahon documentary, Mr. McMahon, that dropped on Netflix. All 6 episodes are out. I have indeed watched all 6 episodes, and I gotta tell you, just my overall thoughts, it seems like a very well produced, completely repackaged and rebuffered version of every single WWE DVD documentary that you've ever seen in your entire life. This is a complete amalgamation of the old Vince McMahon DVD where he had like the Mr. McMahon and Vince McMahon and the two halves of the faces. This is the Monday Night Wars. This is the Montreal Screwjob, the Beyond the Mat. This is literally the true story of WrestleMania. All of them rolled into one. I do think if you've never watched any of these kind of documentaries for WWE, if you're a newbie to WWE and you're looking to kind of expand your knowledge base and get to know the company and the history of it, this is a fantastic exhibition. In my opinion, they nailed it. It is the best, one of, if not the best, wrestling documentaries I've ever seen as far as a production standpoint. You know, little things, and I'm not going to go through and, go step by step over the whole thing because you've seen it all before, right? Vince buys the territory from his dad, puts the territories out of business, starts WrestleMania, steroid scandal, the Monday Night Wars, the Montreal Screwjob, buying WCW, going public. We've seen it all before. But they did do some little things good. They were always right on point with the production. There's a point, just for an example off the top of my head, where they mentioned kayfabe. And I had thought to myself, somebody watching this that doesn't know what that is might not know what they're talking about. And then they immediately go into an explanation of what kayfabe is. So they did a really good job of connecting everything well, and, they didn't get too off into the weeds. They kept it on topic for whatever episode they were talking about. They explained things well. They had a lot of great talking heads. Bret the Hitman Hart, by far my favorite talking head on this entire thing, because he has no filter. I don't know if it's because he got hit in the head and he had that stroke, or if he's just a grumpy old man, or a mixture of both, but he has zero fucks to give. And he does not bite his tongue in this documentary when he gives his 2 cents. But other than that, there's nothing new here. I was expecting more out of this documentary. All they did was a fancy version of every fucking thing we've ever seen before, ever, with the exception of the tie-in at the end of the, recent scandal situation. In fact, the interviews that they did for this 6-part documentary were filmed before the scandals even broke. So none of them even talk about it, hardly. It's a complete nothing burger. It's a very well-produced, empty-calorie nothing burger. Now, it's not, like I said, if you've never seen anything like this, there's a lot to dig into here. I mean, they go into depth. Where we've seen a documentary that was 1-2 hours long, hour and a half, or we've seen, a small series like the Monday Night Wars or whatever. They took the time to tell every story. And another good thing that they did was they were able to incorporate things in that if this was a WWE produced documentary, you'd never see. They do touch on the Jimmy Snuka, Nancy Argentino death, and that Vince possibly made it go away. They got into Vince possibly jury tampering when he was on trial for the steroid gimmick. But yeah, a very well produced documentary. I got nothing bad to say about how they shot it. I got nothing bad to say about the content that's in it. My only gripe with this entire thing is this was 6 hours of shit I've already seen. What was the point of any of this? Just to get to the end where, there's a scandal that's involved with Vince. Now, with that said, there were some tidbits in this documentary that I did want to touch on before we wrap up here that were new to me and that were quite interesting. First of all, just Vince McMahon in general. That sit-down interview with McMahon, they said that he canceled his final session or sessions with them when the story broke. You know, he had more to film, I guess, but he did not complete it. He also kind of went in saying, I'll give you a little bit to chew on, but I'm not going to really open up here for you. And he's like, oh God, if you could just hear the stories that I got, God damn. And then the guy's like, well, we would talk about it. That's what we're here for. And he's like, no, I fucking said no, I'm not going to talk about it. God damn it. They got into, everything into fine detail. Vince gave his perspective. I found it funny. You get these little quirks in Vince McMahon where, he's got this. He tries to babyface himself and make himself look like and this was in no more apparent than in the Monday Night Wars segment. They talked about how he tried to make himself. He literally said the words, "We're just a family-owned business, and we got to compete with this giant billionaire mogul, Ted Turner." Like, oh, fucking cry me your crocodile tears. And they called him out on it. Like, Vince, isn't that kind of the exact same thing that you did to all the territories? And what's funny is that he talked about the territories yeah, fuck them. I was in business. I was trying to compete. If they couldn't compete, sorry about your losses, I guess. Fuck you. Oh, they were death threatening me. I didn't care. And he had numerous things like that. There was a shot he took at retired people. It's like, just go ahead and die already. I don't get the point of retiring. If you're going to retire, what are you going to do with your life? Just die. A little tasteless there. So he's very and who knows if he's playing a character, because he said something too, and I don't have the exact verbiage, but he alluded to, you just throw things out there to get people to think a certain way. He's very clearly a guy that plays the 4D chess, so to speak. He points out that sometimes I'll just say shit just to put a perception out there, just to get the narrative going in a certain direction. Maybe that's not how I truly feel or think, but I'll never let you know. A lot of the people that were interviewed did a lot to kind of comment on how Vince never sells anything. Talking heads were almost your usual. Tony Atlas was very frequent. I don't know why. Hulk Hogan was very frequent. Bret Hart was a frequent contributor. Bruce Pritchard was a frequent contributor. Dave Meltzer was a frequent contributor. And then they had the odds and ends, and, when they got into things, Taker contributed pieces and other people too. John Cena was there, that sort of thing. Cody Rhodes. But really, it was interesting to hear Vince's take on shit. But then, as I was saying, so he'll go down and say, oh, yeah, fuck the territories. I was in business. I was trying to crush they can't compete. Fuck them. But then he complains about how, Eric Bischoff stole all my talent. Ted Turner stole all my talent. Because he's the bigger bad guy than Eric Bischoff, right? So he's stealing my talent. He's doing this and he's doing that. He's giving away my result. God damn it. And the guy's like, isn't that the exact same thing he did to the territory? And Vince got pissed. You could see visibly him getting irritated. I've seen enough interviews, and they showed all those too, by the way, which were great. All the ones where he's slapping papers out of people's hands and getting all in people's faces and stuff. You could see him kind of getting a little hot under the collar when he was being challenged on his trying to babyface himself over the WCW thing. He was like, no, they're trying to put me out of business. I was just trying to compete. Yeah, okay. Sure, Vince. Sure. You're stealing the top talents and the TV time from local promotions in the territories, but you're not trying to put them out of business or nothing. I mean, sorry they couldn't compete. Sorry you couldn't compete with WCW for 83 weeks. My God. So that was very funny. Hulk Hogan, they spent a lot of time on Hulk Hogan, who we all know is a world-class bullshitter. And I think they spent a little too much time on Hulk. I know Hulk is a very significant part of the wrestling business and specifically WWE. You know, they made the point when Hulk jumped to WCW and they were talking about that part that, hey, the rise of the WWF in the 80s was not just Vince McMahon. Like it was a two-person show there. Like Hulk Hogan was the star. Vince was the machine and the mind, the brains, the money behind it. But WWF is the house that Hulk Hogan built. So I get why they spent a lot of time, but comparatively, they did not spend as much time on like Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock. They acknowledged them, but they did not spend the time they spent with Hulk. Same with Cena, Roman Reigns. I don't think he even got mentioned, or Cody, any of the modern guys. Taker, you know, these guys they did not spend a lot of time on these guys, but Hulk they spent considerable amounts of time with. And one thing I found great was, like I said, Hulk's a world-class bullshitter, right? Like the biggest bullshitter. And one story he always tells, one of the tallest tales he's ever told, was this notion that when he went out for WrestleMania 3, I didn't know what the finish was going to be, brother. I was scared to death. I didn't know, and I kept bugging Andre, and he said, don't worry about it. Or however he says it, you know. I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I always thought that was bullshit, because you're going to tell me that you're going out for the main event of the biggest WrestleMania of all time ever, the biggest crowd of all time ever, and this is a make or break moment for your mega star. Andre's back for basically one more match, you know, because he's physically incapable of doing shit. You know, though he wrestled a little bit longer after that, but not really. You know, they hit him in a tag team and he didn't do a whole lot. And I always just called bullshit on this notion that Hulk didn't know the finish. Well, I went out there and I didn't know if Andre was going to put me over or not. And Vince just said, don't worry, he'll do the right thing. Well, I always called bullshit on it, and to Hulk's credit, I will backtrack on my bullshit calling, and I'll never use this one as an example again, because Vince McMahon himself told the exact same story. At WrestleMania 3, he said, Hulk was scared to death. He didn't know if Andre was going to do the honors and put him over out there or not. I told him he'd do the right thing, but you should have seen Hulk's face. I don't know if he said that, but that was the basic gist of it, right? Like, I know Andre's going to do the right thing, but Hulk sure didn't. And hey, props to Hulk Hogan, because I've always called bullshit on that story because it sounds preposterous, but it's fact. I mean, Vince McMahon backs it up, so there you have it. There were lots of other good little tidbits. I don't know that I'm going to remember them all off the top of my head. There's one where they were talking about the CTE stuff towards the end, and Stone Cold Steve Austin had a very unfortunate comment where he basically said, I don't believe in CTE. Vince kind of scoffed at it too. He's just like, you know, you can't tell me that this is the bumps this guy's taken in the ring made him murder his whole family. He more scoffed at that at the steroid thing, which I think is true. Steroids definitely have a roid rage effect, but they're not going to make you like just murder people, right? Especially your loved ones. Like, there's more going on there. And they had Chris Nowinski on to talk about his CTE stuff. And you had Stone Cold Steve Austin just outright say, look, I've had like 1 or 2 concussions my whole career. It's not really something that happens all that much. He's like, well, you know, in fact, I'm of the belief that if it does happen a lot to you, maybe it's a you problem. Maybe you are just not that good of a worker, right? Maybe you're fucking up. You're not protecting yourself, or you're taking stupid bumps, or I don't know. But that was kind of and it was kind of quiet after he said that, and he just looked at the interviewer guy straight faced. They had a lot of fun stuff. You know, they went into the rock and wrestling stuff. Like I said, the whole production, they didn't miss a detail. This is the definitive history of the WWE. It's not just the story of Vince McMahon. I mean, it gets into the Attitude Era, the Montreal screw job. It gets into all of it. The XFL too. Like, to me, this is the definitive story, and it's told so well. Let's see what else. I made a few notes. Forgive me. I'm going to look at my phone and I'm going to check my notes because I don't want to miss anything. I mean, it was fucking 6 hours. Oh yeah. There was a part that Vince he talks about. He has two different trains of thought, which is called ADD, by the way. He's like, it's hard to focus sometimes because my brain, you know, I'm doing this one thing and then my brain's in it. Welcome to ADD, Vince. But he's like, sometimes I even have a whole nother thing going on in my head. And the guy's like, okay. He's like, because Vince is like, I could be sitting here talking to you right now and talking about something different. So the guy humors him. He's like, okay, well, what are you thinking about right now? And he's just like, something sexual, dirty. I don't think he said it was dirty, but it sounded a little pervy. This whole, like, everything that's been going on with the scandals and stuff. I think the last thing you want to do is kind of, you know, say, oh yeah, I'm thinking about dirty sex shit while I'm doing this interview. You know, there's like, you hear Jim Cornette when the scandal first broke. He's like, he couldn't even picture Vince McMahon that way, except for, you know, all the times where Mr. McMahon did all the dirty shit with the women, which they made sure to cover too in the Attitude Era, the making out with chicks in front of his wife and the crawling around on all fours, barking like a dog, bra and panties matches. They covered it all. This is not a good look for Vince McMahon while he's actively in a scandal. Along with that, he made a comment about Rita Chatterton, where he's like, no, that's bullshit, obviously. He's like, plus the statute of limitations is up on that one. So even if I did do it, you can't do nothing except for, New York changed their laws and got rid of their statute of limitations. And surprise, surprise, now he's in trouble for that one too. So all in all, just to put a bow on this, because I'm sure you've seen it. I don't got to go through play-by-play or anything like that. Bret Hart, standout. I thought the talking heads did sufficient, but it was no different than anything else that we've seen. You know, Eric Bischoff gives his take on the Monday Night Wars and all of that kind of stuff. It's all shit that we've heard before. They spent more time on the early days of Vince. They still didn't get too deep into his past. They alluded to the Playboy interview where Vince said he was molested or whatever and he was abused. He talks about he being a bully and getting in fights and stuff all the time when he was a kid. And so that's why he likes to be confrontational now. He still likes to get in fights, essentially, even though he's not physically scrapping, though I'm sure he would. He loves a good confrontation, you know. There's even a part where they show there's a lot of great behind the scenes stuff. Like, they had all access to footage, and they had stuff, they had video footage and pictures that I've never seen before in any of these documentaries. So again, when I say we've seen all this shit before and it's a big nothing burger and they just rehashed everything we've already seen and tacked on a little, oh yeah, and he potentially raped some people or whatever, I gotta tell you, like, the footage that was used, the talking heads, and going into the stories that they would not go into on a WWE production, I feel like this is the definitive WWE documentary. So for that, it's great. But are you going to learn anything new? Is there anything groundbreaking? Is there anything that's been covered that has not been covered to death in the past? I mean, God, we've seen all of this shit in different iterations. So it's It's nothing new, but they did a hell of a job producing it nonetheless. And like I said, there's the little tidbits in there, mostly from Vince, where you just get these little pieces of Vince's personality that come out. You know, he's swearing, he's dropping F-bombs and stuff. But they get into, you know, Stephanie and Shane and what they felt about their dad. Oh, yeah, that's right. They talk about when Shane left the company. Not the second time where he got kicked out of the Royal Rumble or whatever, but the first time where he left for like 7 years before he came back to wrestle The Undertaker in the Hell in a Cell. They talked about that Shane kept pushing something, pushing to the point where Vince just said, not happening as long as I'm alive, over my dead body. And he went as far as to, now eyewitnesses in the room, I don't know if this is true, but they say he pulled his jacket open and handed him a knife. I don't know if he had a knife there or whatever it was. He's like, you're going to need to put this in my heart to get the job done. If you want to do what you want to do, you're going to have to kill me right here and now. And then they added, he's like, so you're either going to kill me, or if you don't, I'll know that you don't got the guts to do it, and I'll have to take that into consideration as well. I mean, that was the line of that might have been the line of the entire documentary. I mean, there was a lot of good ones, but can you imagine handing your son sure, if you watch enough Game of Thrones, you can easily imagine this type of behavior, but to hand your son a knife and say, you ain't getting shit till I'm dead. As long as I'm alive, that ain't gonna happen. Here, you want me dead? Do it. Do it right now in front of everybody. But if you don't do it, then I'll know you're a little bitch. And I'm gonna take that into consideration too. God damn, that's so ruthless. So ruthless. So Shane had all he could do was walk away. Which doesn't surprise me that he's taking pictures with the Young Bucks and shit now and having meetings with Tony Khan. Of course, Shane McMahon is AEW bound, and it makes sense because I don't know that he ever got along with his dad all that well. Lots of good stuff. I mean, it's definitely not a shitty watch. It's entertaining. It's amusing. It's well produced, well done, very informative. It covers all of it, everything. I mean, they left no stone unturned, in my opinion. I don't know. I mean, maybe you can think of a thing or two that they missed or glossed over, but I felt like they did a great job of really going into just literally every single part of wrestling entire history since Vince was around. But also, we've seen all this shit before. This is nothing new. I would guess I was hoping for a different angle or something new, something more in depth on Vince McMahon himself. And all they did was just say, hey, Vince was this guy that started WWE, and this is how he did it. And it's like, yeah, I own that DVD. Thanks. But nonetheless, very entertaining watch. I recommend you do watch it. Just don't go in expecting to like have your mind blown. And then at the end, I do think, overall, they brought Bruce Pritchard back after he had watched like the first couple like rough cuts of like a couple episodes, and he told them that he thought it looked like a hit piece. And this goes with Vince McMahon's comments too. He put out that statement saying that this documentary took liberties and whatever, is trying to paint him to be this bad. We kind of knew that was coming, and it did. They dug in on the steroid scandal, and they dug in on the humiliating women and they went into the Ashley Massaro thing. And then at the end of the last episode, they did like the first 10 minutes probably was all on, Vince was friends with Donald Trump. They worked with Donald Trump. Hair versus hair. Which is interesting to see because you see a crowd that, you hear Meltzer say this was the biggest pay-per-view buying audience of all time. And it's going to be huge. It's going to be the greatest WrestleMania of all time ever. And then they show the crowd like, Donald Trump. It's so preposterous. Like, can you imagine just a few short years later, just an arena full of people? I mean, I guess like at his rallies or whatever, but you get the point. Like, he's a pretty pretty predominantly hated guy by most people. So just to see how like beloved he was at that time, that just goes to show you, kid. All these people on the news and the TV that say they hate the guy or whatever, you know, they were all friends with him, and they all had him on their shows when he was doing The Apprentice, and you know, he was a fairly liked celebrity, and then he got into politics, and oh my God, we hate this guy. So that's how that works. But they tried to kind of tie that in with the burial of Vince, and then like, oh, he didn't show up for his last meetings, and then here's all the scandal information, and that's where we leave it off. You know, that's where things stand at this point. I mean, it's well done. Bravo. You should watch it if you haven't. I'm sure you have if you're watching this. But what did you think? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I would assume they're similar to mine, like very well produced, great content, seen it all before, and definitely a hit piece on Vince McMahon. But if you have contrary thoughts or just anything I missed or overlooked that you thought was significant, I'm sure I did. You know, 6 hours of a very in-depth Vince McMahon documentary. There's a lot I'm sure I glossed over or missed completely, but, you know. What you gonna do? Let me know in the comments. What you gonna do, brother? Peace, love, and pizza. I am your boy, Seth Grimes. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, and we'll catch you in the next video.